Remember that time that you said yes to something that you didn't want to do? That really happened to me where I said yes to something, and then later when I began to start on this project, I was thinking to myself, I don't want to do this right now. I could be doing something else, or I could have said no. I felt that sense of dread. And what better way to begin the new year than learning how to say no? Saying no can be difficult, especially when we are in need of money. I believe we all have experienced that feeling of FOMO, the fear of missing out, not wanting to miss out on opportunities, especially as an artist, to build that status up for ourselves, really, to prove to ourselves that we have certain things underneath our belt, so we can feel that sense of fear of missing out. I told myself that I would not take on any more commissions that would make me feel that sense of dread, that sense of, I don't want to do this. And yet, here we are. As I deal with those feelings, let's dive in on when are good times to say no, when it's not in the direction of your style. Recently, I said yes to a commission. The request was not necessarily in my style. Now, I said yes to this mainly because one, it was some extra cash, and then also I knew the person from years ago, and it was awesome to see them again. There was excitement there as well. In that moment, I did not think too much about, okay, is this in my style? Now, the reason why that's important is because we have to ask ourselves, what kind of work do we want to be commissioned for? What kind of work do we want people to say, hey, can you do this for me in your style? Now, the customer or client may not fully understand why you don't want to do something in that style. To put in perspective, let's take a look at a tattoo artist. Now, a tattoo artist, they do fine line art, or they do new school tattoos, or black and white realism tattoos. Notice how strict tattoo artists are with their art. They're very strict and straightforward with it. For example, you don't send someone who's having eye problems to a foot doctor. We have to keep sort of that same strictness within our art as well. Or else people who wouldn't consider themselves a creative, they may think that since we are an artist, that we can and want to do everything under the sun that's art related. And that's not the case. So we have to, as artists, set that boundary. We have to set that tone to let them know, yes, I can do something like this. I don't want to, because it's not the kind of work that I want to be hired for. It's not the kind of work that I want to be commissioned for. Now, another thing that may do is people now may not look at your work as consistent. They may think you almost do it as a hobby if they see you doing a bunch of different kind of styles of art. Now, there are going to be moments where you may be in need of some money, and saying yes isn't a bad thing. It's totally not a bad thing, especially if you need some cash. You have certain goals that you want to reach. You believe that if you say yes to this opportunity, it's going to help you financially to reach that certain goal. And I believe that's totally fine, and that's okay. I've done it myself. One thing that I like to keep in mind is I did not become an artist to simply look at an artist as the way society looks at a job. And what I mean by a job is mainly something you're doing simply to get paid for. What I believe that does is it almost sucks the life out of being an artist, when our main thought is, I'm going to get paid for this. And that's the only reason I'm doing it. Not creative wise, not I want to develop my skills wise, not I want to empower, inspire, encourage other people, mainly to get paid. In doing so, I believe that will suck the life out of my art, so I strive not to do things strictly for money. I also notice that when I do say yes to commissions or projects and it's strictly for money, as I'm doing these projects, I'm dreading them as I'm doing them, and I cannot wait for them to be over. Another thing is I'm striving to not people please. I notice that sometimes when I'm asked to do something as an artist, I am more quick to say yes than I am to say no. And that can lead into that people pleasing atmosphere. Again, when it's not in my direction of style, I strive to say no because it's not the kind of work that I want to be commissioned for. When your gut says no. There was one time I was asked to be a part of an art show, and I was going back and forth between, do I need to do this? Do I want to do this? And I could not find the answer. Actually, the answer that I continued to come up with was no. At the same time, I had that fear of missing out, and I was going back and forth. I was talking to my wife about it, if I should do it or not. And this company was a locally big company. It was dressed up to be very nice. This is a fancy event. And it's the first time they were putting on an event like this. Now, I do believe sometimes that there are other people who think that art looks great in certain areas, in certain environments, and it does look great. At the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's gonna be an audience for that. Long story short, what I need to do is to say no. This entire time from, I believe, 3 to 4 hours, I sold only about 2 prints. 2 prints this entire time. So just to be very nice, it was a nice event and the people there were great. At the same time, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for most of the artists that were there. Also, another thing that helped me to put it more in perspective logically was to weigh the pros and cons. I believe in this particular situation, I weighed the pros and cons and the answer was still no. I believe the cons still outweighed the pros. And for some reason, I still said yes to this. I said yes because I was okay, I'm gonna do this. And let's just say that was the last show I did this year. That was months ago. At the same time, this entire time, my instinct was telling me to say no. Now, even though we have this fear of missing out, what I'm striving to do now is I may say no to something or yes to something to now use that as a measurement to decide on something else in the future. It's okay to say no, and it's okay to say yes to some things as well. At the same time, when we're having trouble to decide these things, use it as a test. Test it out. That's what I'm striving to do, is test these things out and use that as a measurement for the future. Also to believe that the answer that I come up with, I have to trust that that's the correct answer. To sum up this point, look at it how game creators use games. When they come with a new game, they put out what's called a beta. And what this does is it allows the creators of the game to get a feedback on how the game is doing. Once they put out the real version of the game, the full complete final version, this gives them information from the players to see what they may need to change, what the players like, what they dislike, and this helps them get a provision for how the game's going to turn out. I plan to use these opportunities as betas for the next one. When it doesn't align with your goals, as artists, we can easily fall into the trap of saying yes to things that simply sound good. And as artists, when someone says,
"Hey, I got this opportunity here. It's pretty nice. You want to check it out?"
And us as artists, never experiencing something like this before, we immediately say yes, not realizing that we set goals before that may have nothing to do with the direction of that opportunity that came our way. And now, down the line, we're realizing that we're so far from our goal, we now have to go back and start a new goal. We now have to scrap that old goal and start a new one. Sometimes that's okay, sometimes that's good. Sometimes the opportunity is better than the goal that we had in mind. And then also sometimes I find myself revisiting that same goal to do because I allowed other things to fill up my schedule. Another thing is people will fill up your schedule if you allow them to. When an opportunity comes my way now, I take the time to learn more about it. I take the time to get the details and see how it can align with my goals. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly on point with the goal I had in mind. At the same time, it has to almost be in the same lane. At least they're on the same road. They don't have to be in the same lane, but they're on the same road going in that direction. I now keep in mind questions such as, where do I fit into this? How does it align with what I have planned? What is required of me for this? How much I'm being paid? Those are things that I keep in mind with this, and I keep those striving to keep those at the forefront of my mind to make decisions on opportunities and things that come my way. Now, if you stuck around this long, let me tell you some ways how to say no. One way that helps me to say no is, let's say someone says to you, "Hey, I've commissioned, I would like for you to do this, blank, blank, blank." One way you can say no is, and one that I keep in mind is, unfortunately, I cannot take on this project at this moment. Nice and simple, right? It doesn't go into detail on exactly why. Another thing is, when you bring in an explanation to why, that opens a door for the other person to work around your explanation. Let's say someone says, "Hey, I'd like to commission you for a project this month. Can you do it?" And let's say you don't want to do it. What you don't say, if you don't want to do it at all, is, "I can't work on it this month because I'm busy." Now, what that does is it opens a door for them now to work around that and ask a question. "Oh, well, is next month okay?" Now you're still trying to block off this thing of the simple fact that you simply don't want to do it. So rather give an explanation, give something nice, short, and sweet, as in, "Unfortunately, I cannot take on this project at the moment." It's straight to the point. It's also sort of vague, as in it doesn't give a specific time, so therefore they may not necessarily be able to counter that with something else. And let's say it's something that you not only don't want to do, it's also something that you simply don't do. You could say, "Unfortunately, I cannot do that at the moment," and you can recommend them to someone else. That way, You're still winning by saying no, and they're still winning by also having someone that they can still go to for the kind of project that they want to do. This is information, not advice. Advice implies that you have to do something in the same way that I did it. Information is something that you simply can do with what you will. The main point is to not disappoint yourself. I often tell myself to help me make decisions is that I would rather disappoint someone else than myself. Remember to not always do it for the money, and to remember why you got into art in the first place. Let me know if you want to see more talking head videos like this where it's simply my head in this frame. Look, I can frame it out exactly. Remember to keep creating, stay blessed, and I will see you next time. Also, happy holidays. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. Mine was pretty good. I hope yours was great as well, and I'll see you next time.